Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Childs back here again for another show. Happy Tuesday, another day closer to the return of Chelsea in the Premier League against Bournemouth on Sunday. But we have got some stuff to delve into today. If you haven't checked out my latest show, Added Time, was answering your questions about Mykhailo Mudryk, Cobham and some other things too, please go and check out yesterday's show. Also, an announcement yesterday, you can support Son of Chelsea on Buy Me a Coffee. It's a bit like Patreon. We're going to have a membership tier coming up, so please do hit that like button if you're excited for that. Going to have some merch, exclusive content coming up, but you can just support the show if you've got some spare change this month to help out the content and the channel to get bigger and better as we head into the end of 2023 and then, of course, into 2024. But let's get into the show today because we're going to speak about Trevoh Chalobah. Firstly, because there's been some news that has come out about him today, his Chelsea future or lack of Chelsea future. And then we're going to go into a piece that Liam Toomey did for The Athletic, kind of breaking down the Chelsea squad after so much money was spent over the summer, after so much upheaval of players leaving too, and kind of asking the question, is Chelsea's squad any better? Because I think that's still a question that's being asked. Let's get into it with Trevoh Chalobah. So, Chalobah faces a Chelsea exile after being priced out of summer transfer. This was a piece written by Nazar Kinsella in the London Evening Standard. Chalobah is now considered surplus to requirements, the article says, and could be frozen out at Chelsea. It does note that the 24-year-old is currently sidelined with a hamstring injury and does not expect a prominent role on his return in late September. Chelsea signing of Axel Disasi from Monaco this summer was the beginning of the end for Chalobah at his boyhood club. He was made available for sale, but his initial 50 million asking price was deemed too expensive for his suitors. I do want to add this because this has come out since that story broke this afternoon from Matt Law that Chelsea accepted a resubmitted bid of 25 million, rising to 30-ish million on deadline day for Trevoh Chalobah from Nottingham Forest. He did not want to go. It's not a great situation given he has signed a new contract last November, but there have been no new conversations over his playing time since then. Matt Law goes on to say, I think it's probably pretty clear that his future remains uncertain and he deserves a bit more clarity on his position moving forwards, but that has not been given as yet. He's currently still injured. Trevoh Chalobah then posted to his Instagram a very cryptic post about the future, and of course tied with this news breaking, you do wonder if it is associated to it. But let's play the Instagram video now and you can have your thoughts on it.
Hey God, I ain't gonna lie, man, I'm tired, but I can't give up right now. So whatever you want me to go through, let's do it. I came too far, so I can't quit.
So Trevoh Chalobah, wow, there's a way where I can be a little bit more reactionary about this and emotional about this, but then also a little bit more cynical, right? And maybe just more realistic, some would say, over Chelsea and their approach to academy talent. The way I've seen him develop at Chelsea over recent years, I just think it's a bit of a disgrace, to be honest, the way he's being treated. If this is, we have to take it with a, grain of salt and balance. Have there been conversations about his future? Have there not been? Is he going to be completely in exile to January? We have to see how that plays out. That may not be the case. He has this knack of getting himself in a starting 11 and winning some appearances, because I think he is a quality player and he's a great professional. But this may be the end of his Chelsea career. Until that happens, I think kind of flipping out and going, this is the worst thing ever. I think for me, it's just the message this sends, the potential of Chalobah. It's not even the potential, it's the reality that Chelsea were trying to sell him up to deadline day. And it looked for a while like he was actually going to go to Bayern Munich, which I think I said on this show on deadline day was actually a good deal for him. Like, it was a promotion for him. I felt that would have been a really exciting move to go to the Bundesliga, to play for Bayern Munich. Ironically, play for a coach in Thomas Tuchel, who at times weirdly took him out the first 11, but that would have been seen as a promotion for him, and maybe that move could be further down the line for him. But then you think about Chelsea from a point of view that they handed Trevoh Chalobah a contract extension almost 12 months ago. And I've just got the statement here in terms of Chelsea very much committing their future, very much praising Trevoh Chalobah. If you remember at the time, he had come back into the first team after Graham Potter was appointed. He had some really good performances against AC Milan in the Champions League. He had proven himself once again a valuable first team member for the rest of last season, and especially post-Christmas when Reece James continued to have his injury problems. He played a lot on the right side of the fence. He played a lot as a right back, and I think did a competent job. But then as we headed into the summer, we found out once again that he was likely going to be surplus to requirements, or at least they were very open to selling him as Chelsea looked to sell a lot of players. I feel like from a value point of view, firstly, it kind of says so much to me about Chelsea's failure to build a competent squad and a valuable squad that actually performs consistently, that they will just happily discard Trevoh Chalobah. We saw this with the previous ownership too. I mean, I keep on banging on about this, and I'm sorry if you get tired about it, but it's my opinion. And the fact that Chelsea still haven't replaced this player, no, it's not Diego Costa, who we're never going to be able to replace because Diego is a god. Tammy Abraham, just on like a bare minimum, like 12 to 15 striker goal output. Hopefully, I hope Nicholas Jackson can be that player. I have high hopes for Jackson. But the fact that he left Tammy, and I don't think was treated well by his own set of fans before he left as well, and that's a separate issue. You know, it kind of says so much about how warped kind of our approach to squad building has been. And it's my general concern. I spoke about this yesterday of academy talent being sold on. I think the other part to this too is like, I wonder what message, and maybe Ian Maatson too, because he was very, very close to leaving, Conor Gallagher. I feel like Trevoh, if we look at his story, right, he was on loan for several years, and it was a real shock in that summer of 21 after the Champions League when he actually remained at Chelsea, because Chelsea were trying to sign Jules Koundé, if you remember. That's an old name being brought up now. It was a very long time ago. We were speaking about Jules Koundé being a potential, transfer target. That could have meant that Chalobah, even though he had a very successful preseason, scored on his Premier League debut against Crystal Palace. There was even a reality, like an alternative universe, where Chalobah went on loan to, say, Valencia, I think it was at the time. So he, surprised a lot of people, because after that last loan at Lorient in France, when he returned, there was an expectation that he would be sold permanently. But he broke through for a variety of reasons. Maybe it was the internationals after, an international tournament where I think Rudiger didn't come back to a little bit later. Maybe Kurt Zuma too. For a variety of reasons, he was able to get some minutes. Spain too. Cesar Azpilicueta returned a bit later that summer. So it gave Chalobah a chance to get some minutes. He breaks into the first team. He plays really well. He makes multiple appearances throughout the start of that season when Chelsea have a really good run of form. He scores some important goals. He scores against Juve in a really, really amazing performance that really showcased Chelsea's academy talent that night. And he plays both cup finals against Liverpool, a really good Liverpool team at the time, an attack that was scoring a lot of goals and helped Chelsea keep a clean sheet over 120 minutes twice against that Liverpool attack. That was very, very impressive. So he's had all these moments, and he's had to fight back from a lot of adversity, or just moments where he's been out the team weirdly, but he's come back. He's had to play in different positions, whether that be central midfield, centre back, part of a back three, part of a back four, right back. And then to think he's going to be discarded in this way very easily. I do wonder if you're a future player, if you're a younger player at Cobham, and you're maybe hoping that you could replicate Trevoh Chalobah's story. What hope is there for you, right? Like, what hope is there that it's not going to end the same way? You aren't going to be a regular player. You aren't even going to be respected as maybe like a decent squad member after all that Chalobah has done. Chalobah is not the greatest defender in world football. He may never be that. He may just be a competent to decent level player, which is more realistic, because producing players like Reece James and Mason Mount is unrealistic. As much as I rate the ability of those coaches and the hard work and investment in Cobham and the talent that comes through that academy, of course, some of it has been brilliant. But to produce players like that on a consistent basis is hard. It just is. Any academy in world football, even with the greatest resources, struggle to do it on a consistent basis. The norm is players like Trevoh Chalobah, who still is, an exceptional player if we're talking about the massive pool of academy players that come through Cobham on a yearly basis. But at the same time, his one is maybe a more attainable one. But even when he's being discarded quite easily and potentially discarded, I wonder what message that sends down to the academy. And if Chelsea continue to look to sell on these academy players, it's not going to be long before once again we see the exodus we saw a couple of years ago, because players, I think very rightly, will look at the situation and go, what's the point in sticking around if all the club sees me as just a potential route for profit? If that's it, if there's no kind of, I'm just going to be passed over for an Axel Disasi. This is not about having a go at Axel Disasi, who I think so far has looked okay. I think he was quite shaky against West Ham. I don't think he had the best performance there. He obviously scored a goal against Liverpool. It's not about having a go at him personally. I hope he succeeds at Chelsea, like any Chelsea player that comes in. But, you can't convince me that Axel Disasi is 50 million worth replacing Trevoh Chalobah. That's not a massive upgrade to me. And this is the thing I spoke about yesterday. If you are not replacing your academy players with players who prove to be world class, if that term means anything now, they come into the first team and they produce exceptional performances. Enzo Fernandez, I think, falls into that category. It's the first one that comes to mind, but it's obviously relevant right now. When I'm seeing money being spent on subpar to all right players or ones that just completely fail to deliver, you've got to be asking questions, haven't you? And why you're just skipping over the chance to find internal solutions, which is what Trevoh Chalobah has been, could still be in the future. Those are my thoughts on Trevoh Chalobah. Let me know yours, and we'll be back after this. So the second part of this show, we're going to look at Liam Toomey's piece for The Athletic, Chelsea squad audit, young potential, a midfield revamp, but lack of bite remains. So I'm just going to put this graph that was part of the piece on the screen now. Basically, it's a breakdown of Chelsea squad this season. Player options across each position in 23-24. If you're listening on the podcast, it's basically a football pitch where all the players are listed out in technically a 4-2-3-1 formation. Back four, obviously goalkeeper, central midfield or defensive midfield, then central midfield, left wing, attacking midfield, right wing, and centre forward. So you do have some crossover there because, of course, the likes of Levi Colwill are listed as a left back as well as a left centre back. And in central midfield too, we've got the likes of Moises Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, and Ugo Chukwu. In central midfield, he's put down Conor Gallagher and Enzo Fernandez. In Nkunku, Chukwuemeka, and Cole Palmer. In the attacking midfield, Cole Palmer also listed as a right winger with Raheem Sterling and Noni Madueke. Funnily enough, because of course what we've seen so far this season, and this was a massive debate over recent weeks, Ben Chilwell listed as a left winger alongside Mykhailo Mudryk and also Christopher Nkunku, and then Jackson, Breuer and Washington as the centre forward. He also colour codes this in terms of under contract, loaned in, loaned out, contract expiring, and new signing. Really good breakdown, and he kind of goes through each area. And I definitely suggest link in the description box below. He gives his opinions and thoughts and breaks down every area of Chelsea's squad. That's not what we're going to go through today. I wanted to read out kind of near the end of the piece when he talks about the amount spent by Chelsea and kind of why there is kind of a conflict and understandable concern, confusion from some Chelsea fans over maybe the lack of instant output from the amount that has been spent by this current ownership. This is what Liam Toomey breaks down and says: Chelsea's squad is far from what most supporters would expect to see in the wake of seeing around £1 billion, $1.25 billion committed on transfer fees in a little more than 12 months. This might be the most expensive array of football talent ever assembled, but it is not built to win at the highest level right now, and it does not look particularly complete. Such assessments are likely to shift significantly with time. The inevitable consequence of having this many young players and development projects in one squad is that some will make spectacular leaps forward, others will stagnate or regress, and the rest will follow trajectories somewhere in between. I think that conflict and confusion, whatever you want to call it, or criticism of the strategy, I think is understandable. I have sometimes rallied against this idea of just experience, because I would tell you last season's squad was a lot older, and a lot of those experienced players failed to deliver the results. In recent years, when we have gone for those players, they haven't exactly proven, with the exception of Olivier Giroud and I think Thiago Silva are the two best examples I've seen in the past 5-10 years. Probably that's a little bit too much, but at least 5 years of players that have come in at an older age, have proven experience, have added instant impact, have been good rotational players at times. I think good influences on younger players around them. You can add maybe in the later years of their Chelsea career, Willian and Pedro to that too. Those are relevant examples, but a lot of the time when we've bought older, it hasn't exactly meant instant results, and that is a problem. And especially once those players don't give you those instant results, they become difficult to shift. So I don't think it's as simple as let's just start buying players over the age of 25 and everything will be great. My concern is there is a lopsided nature to this squad, especially in an attack. We have a lot of players of similar age who all need minutes. I think that there is a balanced discussion here over Chelsea have spent a lot. They have it at times, and I think I was with that ad I made yesterday kind of jokingly about kind of this massive obsession with signing young players and players who don't have a lot of experience and are going to come into a club where they're going to find themselves lost, even though on their own, individually, with the right development plan, they may prove to be very, very beneficial players for us. It's just, it all looks a little bit cluttered at the moment, and I don't blame people for having those concerns that, I've brought up in terms of selling off academy players. What does that mean for people having a connection? But then is it actually helping out the value within our squad? But I'm not as downbeat as everyone else, because looking at the numbers so far this season, looking at the coach we have, who I rate very highly, and looking at some of the players, I personally, this is just my approach, I enjoy the fact that there are a lot of young players here that could develop. I think there's some talented players here that I'm excited to see how they grow under Mauricio Pochettino. And also that 1 billion in context is also Chelsea rectifying the mistakes of the previous ownership and also making new ones, and then having to clean up the mess that they've already made. I mean, it's not the fact that Chelsea was starting from a position of an amazingly built squad. You don't spend 1 billion in that short time if you have a really, really good squad. And one that's already proving value. I mean, logically, you just wouldn't do that. So there are a lot of problems to make up. And also there's been a lot of shifting of players, I think majority of which I think were the right decisions at the time of the summer. And I still think that's true. But seeing how this spend goes and how that works with fan expectation, and also understanding it's a young team and the scrutiny that's going to come from that spend, even if you do look at the squad and say it's been spent on a lot of players who still need time to grow, that in itself is something that I think is going to be difficult if Chelsea aren't getting results, because some people will look at that and instinctively think to themselves, well, couldn't we have spent that money elsewhere, and couldn't we have spent that money on actual short-term results? That is a wider cultural debate around Chelsea that we've been having for a very long time. I lean more in a direction that I think it is shrewder to have a longer term view of this, and that short term solutions actually set us back further. But obviously the proof is going to be in how this squad develops, and actually have Chelsea just cluttered their squad even more in a different way. Rather than having experienced players failing, they're going to have young ones failing, and some of those really stalling, and financial struggles will come from that in the future, and we'll be having to chase our tail even more in upcoming years. Let me know your opinions. Are you positive? Are you negative? Do you think that that there needs to be context over that billion, and actually it isn't all just about instant results now, and actually in 2 to 3 years time, while some are not going to wait 2 to 3 years time, actually that's going to look like a really shrewd piece of investment in the upcoming years, and Chelsea have spent the money now and actually have spent on some very good players. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That is it for today's show. If you do want to support the show, as I said at the start, go on to Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description box below. You can financially help the show out. But 3 ways to do it, very easy way to do it. Share the show with your friends, get more Chelsea fans involved, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. You can also give the show a positive rating review, really does help. Also, get the podcast out to more people. Social channels, all of that stuff that you can follow the show on in the description box below. And I will see you again very soon. All the best.